When you're performing a penetration test or CTF against a corporate network, chances are they're using Active Directory to manage their domain. Active Directory is Microsoft's directory service for managing and organizing resources in Windows domain networks. It stores information about users, computers, and other network resources, and provides authentication and authorization services to ensure secure access. Active Directory is used by approximately 80% of organizations worldwide, so it's important to know how to attack it. Luckily, there's a very useful tool that does most of the heavy lifting for us, and that tool is BloodHound. BloodHound is an open source tool used to analyze and visualize relationships within Active Directory environments. It helps identify potential attack paths and security misconfigurations, making it a valuable tool for both penetration testers and defenders. As a penetration tester, we can use BloodHound to discover attack paths, to escalate our privileges and move laterally through a Windows domain, potentially finding a way to take over domain admin and own the entire network. In this video, I'll show you how to install and set up BloodHound, and show you how to run one of the many different BloodHound ingester tools to gather Active Directory information, and then upload that information to our instance of BloodHound to discover attack paths that'll grant us higher privileges in a domain. So let's get started. The easiest way to install BloodHound is to be using a Kali virtual machine, because there's an official Kali repository for BloodHound. If we take a look at the Kali tools BloodHound documentation, we see that we can just do a simple sudo apt install BloodHound. And once that installs, we can run BloodHound's configuration script by doing a sudo BloodHound setup. BloodHound runs on Neo4j, so running this BloodHound setup tool will initialize all the necessary services and configurations, including that Neo4j service. So a local instance of Neo4j will spawn on port 7474, and you can authenticate to that service with the credentials Neo4j, Neo4j, and once you've authenticated, you can change them whenever you'd like. And if you do decide to change the password of your Neo4j instance, make sure you also reflect that change in the etc bhapi.json file, where you'll replace the secret value with the new password that you've set for the Neo4j account. Once you've configured Neo4j, you can finally run an instance of BloodHound by just doing a simple sudo BloodHound and logging in as the user admin, which will then prompt you to change the password. I already have BloodHound set up on this virtual machine, but we can go ahead and run sudo BloodHound setup just to show you what it looks like. Once the setup completes, we see that it opens an instance of Neo4j on 7474, and we'll open our browser as well. My instance of Neo4j already logged me in, but if you're running this for the first time, you'd be prompted to log in as the Neo4j account. And if you see this page where it says you're connected as a user Neo4j, then you're all set up and you can finally run BloodHound. To launch BloodHound on Kali, all you have to do is do a sudo BloodHound, and you can optionally use the --no-sandbox flag to launch the instance of BloodHound without sandbox restrictions, which can help with compatibility issues. Once that completes, your browser will open with a BloodHound Community Edition login page, where if you're doing this for the first time, you'd use the username and password admin, and this is what it should look like once you get signed in. If you're not running an instance of Kali, you can still download BloodHound by going to the SpectreOps BloodHound GitHub. Here's where you can get the files to set up BloodHound to run in a Docker instance. If you want to learn more about setting up your BloodHound instance running in Docker, you can refer to this quick start guide for BloodHound Community Edition, which will take you through an easy guide for setting up BloodHound with Docker Compose. Now that we have BloodHound open, let's take a quick look around to show you its different pages before ingesting some data. This main home screen that we land on, the Explore page, is where we're going to see all of the different nodes that we ingest. We'll be able to search for specific nodes like users and computers here. And the Pathfinding tab will show us different maps, how we can go from one node to another node, which I'll showcase in a minute. Next up, we have the powerful Cipher tab, which will allow us to run preset or custom queries to find specific attack paths on the ingested data. More on that later as well. Next up, if we go to the left here, we can see the Group Management button. This tab allows us to easier manage the nodes that we find with our ingested data. Next up, we have the Quick Upload button. This is how we upload or ingest data that we collect from our ingestors that we'll run in a minute. Next up, we have the Profile tab, which is just a standard profile page where we can set up API key management, reset our password, or set up multi-factor authentication. Next is the Administration tab. Here is another way to ingest our BloodHound files, and we can see the history of our ingested data. If we ever want to delete data out of BloodHound, we can go to the Database Management button and select these check marks to delete the data out of here. Next, under Users, Manage Users, we can add or delete users for our BloodHound instance. And we can also set up single sign-on with the single sign-on configuration tab. If you fancy working with the BloodHound API, you can go to the API Explorer and learn about the API endpoints that are available with BloodHound. And then lastly, we've got documentation and support, and we can change our BloodHound instance to be dark mode. All right, now that we have a brief overview of what all the buttons do, let's start ingesting some data. In order to run a BloodHound ingester to gather data about an Active Directory environment, we need to be able to meet one of two requirements. Depending on the requirements that we meet, we can run one of 3 ingestors. If we have a set of domain user credentials, but no foothold on a Windows domain joined system, then we can run the BloodHound-Python ingester straight from our Linux attack box. To do this, we can run sudo bloodhound-python, and then specify the user that we have control over with the -u flag, the password of that user with the -p flag, the name server of the domain's IP address, which is typically going to be the domain controller's IP address, and then specify the domain name with the -d flag, in this case administrator.htb. And then the -c all flag is going to tell BloodHound-Python to run all checks, so we get as much data as possible. If our tool runs successfully, we'll see that it finds domains, computers, users, groups, GPOs, and containers about the domain that we ran it against. And in our current directory, we should see JSON files of those different things that we discovered, which we'll upload to our instance of BloodHound. BloodHound-Python is a great tool for gathering BloodHound data from a Linux environment. However, it does have a couple of downsides of not being as feature complete as the Windows alternative SharpHound, which we'll talk about in a second. And it also does run a little bit slower, as it's not very optimized for performance. That is why I recommend installing RustHound, which is a version of the BloodHound data collector written in Rust. It includes more features than the Python version of the BloodHound collector. It also can be run on any platform, meaning you could run the same RustHound ingester from either Linux or Windows, and the syntax is very similar to the Python version. To run the RustHound ingester from our Linux box, we can do a sudo rusthound. We can specify the -u flag to specify the user and the -p for their password, similar to BloodHound-Python. Instead of -ns to specify the name server, we use a -f, and the -d for the domain name stays the same. Optionally, you can also run the -z flag to take all of the JSON files that it generates and zip them up into one file. Running RustHound took less than a second, and we see that it generates the same files as the BloodHound-Python ingester. The last version of the ingester that exists is the SharpHound version. So similar to BloodHound-Python and RustHound, this is a BloodHound ingester that is written in C#. If you go to the SpectreOps BloodHound Legacy Tree Master Collector's GitHub, you can download the sharphound.exe BloodHound ingester yourself, or you can also get the sharphound.ps1 PowerShell script version of the ingester as well. These ingestors can be ran on a Windows foothold that is on the domain, without knowing the credentials of the logged on user on that foothold, so it's perfect for if you don't have a pair of credentials, but you've managed to gain a foothold on a Windows system through some sort of exploit. Now that we've ran our ingestors and created some JSON files, let's upload these to our instance of BloodHound so we can start finding some attack paths. So back on our instance of BloodHound, it's very easy to upload. We can just go to either quick upload or administration, upload files. Then we can click here to open up our file explorer, and we can navigate to where we had those JSON files saved, highlight them all and open, and then click upload. And these may take a minute or so to ingest. If you get the bug that says canceled, you can just upload them again and it should work. Once our file ingest status is complete, then we are good to go to start looking for attack paths against our domain. Now back on the Explorer page, we can search for nodes that exist on the domain. Since we use the user Olivia, let's search for her. And here we see the Olivia at administrator.htb node. If we click on them, we can get more information, such as the node type being user, their full display name, and object ID. We can see if they're an admin or if they allow unconstrained delegation. We also know their creation date, their full distinguished name in Active Directory, if the account is enabled or not, their last logon time, and when their password was last set. Down at the bottom here, we can click on this member of dropdown to see what groups that this Olivia user is a member of. And this will also populate the map to show the graph of their membership. So we can see that Olivia is a member of remote management users, regular users, authenticated users, domain users, everyone, and pre-Windows 2000 compatible access. If Olivia had any sessions open while we did the BloodHound ingestion, we would see that here. If Olivia had local admin privileges, we'd be able to click this dropdown as well as execution privileges. And one of the best ways to find attack paths is looking at the outbound object control, which basically tells us what our user Olivia has control over in the domain. We'll come back to outbound object control in a minute when we start talking about attacking Active Directory. But the last thing I want to show is inbound object control, which is basically telling us what accounts have access to our Olivia user. With all that node information out of the way, the first thing I like to do when I ingest my BloodHound data is mark any users that I have full control over as owned. So to do that, we can just right click on our node here as Olivia and click add to owned. And what this is going to do is help BloodHound find different attack paths depending on what we have access to when we run our certain Cypher queries. So speaking of Cypher queries, let's go ahead and click on that dropdown, and then let's drop down these saved queries. And here we have a bunch of really helpful queries that we can instantly run to gather more information about the domain and potentially find some attack paths. So a good query to run is all domain admins, so we have an idea of which users we're trying to gain access to. So we can click all domain admins and then run. And we see that in this particular case, just the administrator user is a member of domain admins. If the account wasn't already, we could right click and add to high value target, which will again help BloodHound find specific attack paths to gain access to high value targets. And I won't take the time to go over every single one of these queries, but each one has a specific use case that could be helpful for attacking the domain and eventually taking it over. For example, if we look for principals with DC sync privileges, we could have potentially found a user that may not have been a domain admin, but had the ability to use the DC sync privilege to gather all of the password hashes in the domain. Computers where domain users are local administrators may be useful for taking control of that certain machine, maybe for lateral movement or privilege escalation. If you get a hit on this query, which is paths from domain users to tier 0/high value targets, you've basically already taken over the domain, because it will show you an attack path from your domain user all the way to the high value target or domain admin. There also exist queries to find curb roastable users. So if any account had a service principal name and was curb roastable, we could run these queries to figure those out. And same goes for asrep roastable users. Another helpful query to run that is a little more complicated is the shortest path to tier 0/high value targets. This will basically show us every single way we could gain access to a tier 0 or high value target in the domain. In this specific instance here, it doesn't look too useful, but depending on the environment, this could be another quick win to gaining domain admin on the network. Like I said, I won't go through every single one of these queries because there's quite a lot, but each one of these could potentially be a way to gaining domain admin through abusing things like DS-only Kerberos authentication, certificate authority vulnerabilities, NTLM relay vulnerabilities, and so on. So that was a quick rundown on how ciphers can be useful for finding attack paths in an Active Directory environment. And now something I want to revisit is the outbound object control over objects that we have control over. This is typically how you're going to figure out that you can escalate privileges in an Active Directory environment, or CTF, because this is telling us what our user has control over. In this example here, we see that our user Olivia, which we have the username and password for, has generic all privileges over the user Michael. If we didn't already know how to abuse generic all to take over the Michael user, we could click the generic all path, and then depending on if we're on a Windows system or Linux system, we could take a look at the different examples that BloodHound gives us to take over that Michael user. Since we're currently on a Linux system, let's use the Linux abuse dropdown, and we see that we can either run a targeted curb roast against Michael to try and crack Michael's password. We could do a force change password to change the password of Michael to something that we set, or we could run the shadow credentials attack using a tool like PyWhisker. So now that we know that we basically have control over the Michael user, if we wanted to, say, change their password to something that we know, like password123, we can now set the Michael user to owned and then see what outbound object control that this Michael user has. In this instance, we see that Michael has the force change password permission over Benjamin. And once again, if we didn't know how to abuse force change password, we could go ahead and click the force change password path, click either the Windows or Linux abuse dropdowns, and we can get examples for how to abuse this privilege to take over the Benjamin user. So once again, we know we can change the password of Benjamin to something that we know, so we can add him to owned as well. And we see that this Benjamin user doesn't have any outbound object control, unfortunately. But if we go ahead and take a look at what this Benjamin user is a member of, we see that we now are a member of the share moderators group, which we weren't previously a member of with our other users that we took control over. So maybe Benjamin has access to a privileged share that has confidential or important information that could give us even deeper access on the domain. Another thing to consider is now that we've owned 2 more users, we could go back to our cipher queries and rerun queries like the shortest path from owned objects to potentially discover new users and objects that we can take control over. To drill this point even deeper, let's say that as the Benjamin user, we access one of those privileged shares to get Emily's password. We can now mark Emily as owned and see that she has even more outbound object controls, which shows us that she has generic right over the user Ethan. With generic right permissions, we could either run a targeted Kerberos attack or the shadows credentials attack to take over that user, who happens to have get changes all over the entire administrator domain. With the get changes all permission, we figure out that we can run secretsdump.py to perform a DC sync attack and dump all of the password hashes in the domain. This would allow us to run a pass the hash attack against the administrator user and gain full control over this administrator.htb domain, meaning we've completely owned this network. Thanks for watching this tutorial on how to use BloodHound to own Active Directory domains. If you liked the video or found it useful, please leave a like and subscribe for more content like this, and join my Discord if you haven't already. If you have any suggestions for a video, please leave comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.